Hello, everybody. This is Linda Stern from the Stern Family Art Collection. Today, we're bringing you a very interesting painting by a woman modernist named Helen Forbes. Helen Forbes lived from 1891 to 1945. As you remember, a couple of days ago, we told you about Elsie Palmer Payne, kind of a contemporary, although they lived in different areas of the state, but might have known each other. But they were both considered women modernists. Here's John Stern to tell you about what the women modernist movement was and about Helen Forbes.
Hello. Again, this is a painting by Helen Forbes. It's called El Baratillo. It was painted in 1926 in the city of Guanajuato in Mexico. El Baratillo is an expression, a name that means like a market or a flea market or a place where you can buy flowers, fruits, and all sorts of stuff. This is the Plaza del Baratillo in Guanajuato, and it's got this magnificent fountain. And there's some people down here, they're selling some fruit. There's a dog, there's some people over there, and there's somebody up here. This is a great example of a modernist painting. And by modernism, I mean a change in the focus of the art from what is visually accurate to something that creates more emotional content. A lot of the Impressionists got a little bit disappointed with their paintings because they didn't have much of an emotion. They were very visual, very representational. And people like Gauguin and Van Gogh and Cézanne decided to put in more content to it. So they did that primarily by either working with color, in this case the color is very intensified, or working with line, or working both with color and line, as you can see here. Modernism changes a painting from a purely representational view to a more of a design. And it is characterized by simplification of forms. Here you see that the forms are rather simplified. They're not too well three-dimensionally presented. Also by a flattening of the space. This is not a three-dimensional space per se, although there's a lot of beautiful lines that lead you into the back of the painting. But the intent of the artist is not to create what you see. It's to create something that you feel, something that gives you more of an emotional content. So this is what Helen Forbes did. She worked in San Francisco area. She painted in Mexico in the 20s. This is 1925-26. She also painted in Death Valley. Very stark paintings, very bold paintings, a lot of emotional quality. In this case, there's this combination of line and color that really hits you, but not on the visual scale. If you were to criticize this visually, you'll say, well, there's no three-dimensional space. It's mostly a bunch of lines. But actually, it's the intent of the artist, is to create this type of space.
Why was it that there were so many women in the modernist movement, not so many men at this time in the, say, 50s, 40s, and 50s?
Well, that's an excellent question, Linda. Excuse me. At this time, starting from the turn of the century or even the 1890s, there was a lot of Victorian sentiment that a woman should not work for a living. A woman should be at home, taking care of the kids and of the husband. So a lot of women had a very difficult time selling their work, women artists. One artist, particularly Euphemia Charlton Fortune, she went by her middle name, Charlton Fortune, and people would not immediately know she was a woman, so she could sell her paintings. But also women artists in the teens and 20s had a hard time getting representation with dealers. Dealers didn't want to handle them, they didn't sell so much. So as such, unlike people like Edgar Payne and William Wendt that were pretty well dedicated to a specific style, and they had to keep that style going because that's what the public, the art buyers wanted. In modernism, and the women in this case, they were free to experiment because they weren't represented really by any gallery and they weren't stuck to one particular style. So the women were more inquisitive, they were more in touch with what was happening in Europe, with things like Cubism. This has a feel of Cubism to it. And like Fauvism, again, the colors here have been accentuated and changed away from their naturally appearing color. So women like Donna Schuster, and like Ruth Peabody, and like Helen Forbes were free to experiment, and they did. They tried all sorts of styles, and very often you see that in the career of a woman artist, there may be 5 or 6 periods in her life where she changed her style.
How interesting. Well, there certainly is a big emphasis on shape in this painting. I know you often talk about modernism. There was the line and the shape and the color movements. This seems to be more of the line movement, or what do you think?
Well, it has a little bit of everything in it. The forms are simplified. There's not a lot of definition to the people. They don't even have faces. That wasn't important. This big fountain here is also very simplified. There's just, 3 faces that have 3 different colors. So it wasn't so much to create reality as to create a design and to create an emotional contact with the viewer.
Well, it's certainly an interesting painting, and I think that you have shown me on the internet photographs of this very fountain. It still exists, this park in Mexico, and one could go there and see it today.
Yes, it's in the city of Guanajuato, which is the capital of the state of Guanajuato, and that is still there. It can still be seen, and there's still a little market around it, one or 2 days a week.
Well, that would be fun to go and seek out some of these places and take photos and see how they've changed. Perhaps a lot, perhaps not. Anyway, that's Helen Forbes, very interesting artist, primarily of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Didn't have a long life, unfortunately, but an important woman modernist. So take care, stay well, and we'll see you again in our next edition of Art with the Sterns.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.